The iron shackles around Lily Harper's wrists felt heavier than they had any right to, as if the metal itself understood the weight of betrayal that had brought her to this moment, standing on a wooden platform in the dusty center of Bozeman, Montana, while strange men examined her like livestock at auction. The summer sun blazed overhead in this year of 1878, and sweat trickled down her spine beneath the threadbare calico dress that had once belonged to someone who probably hadn't been sold by their own family. Her mother-in-law, Margaret Harper, stood 20 feet away, counting the gold coins a trader had just placed in her gnarled hands, not even bothering to hide the satisfaction twisting her weathered face into something uglier than usual. Lily's husband had been dead 3 months, killed in a mining accident that had crushed him beneath tons of rock and left her alone with his bitter, vindictive mother who had always despised the girl her son had chosen to marry. The auctioneer, a portly man with tobacco-stained teeth and a voice like gravel scraping against wood, cleared his throat and addressed the small crowd that had gathered in the town square. "Now, gentlemen, we have here a fine young woman, strong back, good teeth, no diseases as far as the cellar attests. She can cook, clean, and knows her way around a homestead. Bidding starts at $20 gold." Lily wanted to scream, to fight, to run, but two armed men flanked the platform, and she knew that resistance would only earn her a beating or worse. She had already tried reasoning with Margaret, had begged and pleaded and promised to work harder, to be better, to do anything if she would just let her go free. But Margaret had looked at her with eyes as cold as January ice and said that Lily was property now, that her son's debts needed paying, and that a useless widow was worth more sold than kept. The legal papers Margaret had produced, forged or otherwise, seemed to satisfy the local authorities, who turned blind eyes to such transactions when money changed hands in the right directions. $25, called a man with a scarred face and hands that looked like they had broken more than their share of bones. 30, countered another, this one older, with a leer that made Lily's skin crawl. She kept her eyes fixed on the distant mountains, those purple peaks that promised freedom she would never taste. Her parents were long dead, victims of cholera that had swept through their wagon train when she was 15. She had no siblings, no family except the woman who had just sold her. No one in this world who cared whether she lived or died. Thomas Harper had been kind enough, if weak-willed, unable to stand up to his domineering mother, even when she made Lily's life a daily misery. Now he was gone, and Lily was paying the price for 3 years of being unwanted in the Harper household. $50 gold, came a new voice, deeper than the others, with a tone that cut through the murmuring crowd like a knife through butter. Lily's gaze snapped toward the speaker despite herself. He stood at the edge of the gathering, tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair that brushed his collar and eyes the color of storm clouds. He wore the practical clothing of a working cowman, dust on his boots and sun-weathered skin that spoke of long days under open skies. Something in his expression was different from the hungry looks of the other bidders, something harder to define but impossible to ignore. $50, the auctioneer repeated, surprise evident in his tone. That is a considerable sum. Do I hear 60? The other men grumbled, but no higher bids came. $50 gold was more than most cowboys earned in 3 months of hard work. The scarred man spat in the dirt and walked away, muttering about crazy fools and their money. The auctioneer waited a full minute, calling for higher offers that never materialized, before bringing down his gavel against the wooden podium with a crack that sounded like a death sentence. Sold to Isaac Xenith for $50 gold. The world tilted slightly as rough hands unlocked Lily's shackles, and she had to grip the platform's railing to keep from swaying. Isaac Xenith approached, his boots thudding against the packed earth, and pulled a leather pouch from his pocket. He counted out the coins with methodical precision, placing each one in the auctioneer's palm, while Margaret Harper watched with greedy eyes from her position near the general store. When the transaction was complete, Isaac turned to Lily, and for the first time their gazes truly met. His eyes were gray, she realized, gray like smoke or steel or the sky before a storm. They studied her face with an intensity that should have been frightening, but somehow was not. Then he did something that shocked her down to her bones. He reached into his vest pocket, withdrew a small object, and held it out to her. A silver dollar, worn smooth with age and handling, glinted in the harsh sunlight. "This is yours," he said simply. "You are not property. You are not owned. Take this and know that you are free to leave any time you choose." Lily stared at the coin, then at him, unable to process his words. Behind him, the auctioneer was already calling for the next lot, and the crowd was dispersing, interested only in the next transaction or the next drink at the saloon. Margaret had vanished, probably to spend her blood money on whatever vices occupied her empty hours. Nobody was paying attention to the tableau on the platform except the two people who stood at its center. "I do not understand," Lily whispered, her voice rusty from disuse. She had barely spoken since Margaret had announced her intentions 3 days ago. "I bought you free," Isaac said, still holding out the silver dollar. "Take it. It is a symbol, nothing more, but sometimes symbols matter." Her hand trembled as she reached for the coin, half expecting him to snatch it away at the last moment, to laugh at her foolishness for believing that anyone would truly offer freedom without a price. But his fingers merely opened further, making it easier for her to take the silver, and when she closed her fist around the cool metal, he nodded as if something important had been settled. "I have a ranch about 10 miles north of here," he continued, his voice pitched low enough that only she could hear. "I need help running it. The work is hard but fair, the pay is honest, and you would have your own room, your own space. If you want to come work for me, the offer stands. If you want to take that silver and walk in any other direction, that is your choice to make. But either way, you are not a slave, and you are not property. And no piece of paper says otherwise in my book." Lily looked down at the silver dollar in her palm, then at the distant mountains, then at the town of Bozeman with its false-fronted buildings and hard-eyed inhabitants. She had no money except this single coin, no skills beyond household work, and no prospects in a world that had just demonstrated exactly how much value it placed on a woman alone. But she also had, for the first time in 3 months, a choice. The weight of that choice was almost as heavy as the shackles had been. "Why?" she asked, meeting his eyes again. "Why would you do this?" Something flickered across Isaac's face, some shadow of old pain or memory that came and went too quickly to identify. "Because nobody should be bought or sold," he said. "And because I needed help anyway, so I might as well use that gold for something decent instead of letting one of those other men take you home like an animal. Now, are you coming or are you going?" She had nowhere to go. That was the simple truth of it. But more than that, something in Isaac Xenith's steady gaze and quiet words made her want to trust him, made her want to believe that maybe, just maybe, not every man in the world was like Thomas's mother or the leering bidders who had eyed her with such hunger. It was a slim hope, as fragile as a bird's wing, but it was the only hope she had. "I will come," Lily said, and the words felt like stepping off a cliff, not knowing whether she would fall or fly. Isaac nodded once, sharp and decisive, then gestured toward a horse tied at the nearby hitching post. The animal was a sturdy bay gelding, well cared for but working stock rather than fancy breeding. He untied the reins and swung into the saddle with the easy grace of someone who had spent more time on horseback than on foot, then extended his hand down to her. "Can you ride?" he asked. "Not well," Lily admitted. "I can stay on if the horse does not run." "He will not run," Isaac assured her, and helped pull her up behind the saddle. She had to wrap her arms around his waist to keep her seat, which felt intensely strange and intimate given that they had known each other for less than 10 minutes. But he did not comment on it, merely nudged the horse into a steady walk that carried them north out of Bozeman, away from Margaret Harper and the auction platform and everything that had defined Lily's life up until this moment. They rode in silence for the first mile, the town falling away behind them as the trail wound through stands of pine and cottonwood. The air smelled cleaner out here, away from the smoke and waste of civilization, and despite everything, Lily felt some of the tension begin to ease from her shoulders. She could still feel the phantom weight of the shackles, still hear the auctioneer's voice calling for bids, but with every step the horse took, those memories receded slightly, becoming less immediate and more distant. I should tell you about the ranch, Isaac said eventually, his voice carrying easily despite the steady clop of hooves. It is not much yet, but it is mine free and clear. I have about 200 acres of decent grazing land, a creek that runs year-round, and enough timber for building and firewood. The house is small, just 4 rooms, but it is solid, and the roof does not leak. I run about 50 head of cattle right now, hoping to expand to 100 by next year if the market holds and the winter is not too harsh. Lily listened, trying to picture what he described. She knew almost nothing about ranching, having spent her entire married life in Bozeman working at Margaret's boarding house, cooking and cleaning for strangers who never bothered learning her name. The idea of open land and animals and a house that was not filled with her mother-in-law's constant criticism felt like something from a dream. I am not much of a rancher, she admitted. I can cook and clean, and I know how to tend a garden, but I have never worked with cattle. Nobody is born knowing, Isaac said. I learned, and you can learn if you want to. But I am not expecting you to punch cows or break horses. Mostly I need help with the household work, the cooking, the garden like you mentioned, maybe helping with the chickens and such. I have been doing it all myself for 2 years now, and it is getting to be too much with the ranch growing. I need to focus on the cattle and the land, and I need someone to manage the house. That is what I was hoping to find when I came to town today. Is that why you went to the auction? Lily asked, curiosity momentarily overcoming her caution. Isaac was quiet for a long moment, and she felt his back tense beneath her arms. I went to town for supplies, he said finally. I heard about the auction from someone at the general store. He was laughing about it, making jokes about the desperate widow being sold off. Something about it did not sit right with me, so I went to see for myself. When I saw you up there, saw the way those men were looking at you, I knew I had to do something. Maybe it was not my place. Maybe I should have minded my own business, but I could not just walk away. There was something in his tone, some underlying current of anger or grief that told Lily there was more to that story than he was saying. But she did not press, sensing that Isaac Xenith was not a man who shared his secrets easily. Instead, she said, "Thank you for doing something, for not walking away." He did not respond, but she felt some of the tension leave his shoulders, as if her words had eased something in him. They rode on, following a trail that grew narrower and less defined as they left the main road behind. The sun tracked across the sky, marking the passage of time in the shifting of shadows and the growing warmth of the afternoon. Lily's legs began to ache from the unaccustomed position, and her arms grew tired from holding on, but she did not complain. Whatever discomfort she felt now was nothing compared to what might have awaited her in the hands of one of those other bidders. Finally, as the sun was beginning its descent toward the western peaks, Isaac guided the horse up a gentle rise and over a small ridge. Below them, nestled in a valley where a creek sparkled like a ribbon of silver, sat a log cabin with smoke rising from its stone chimney. A barn stood nearby, weathered but sturdy, and she could see cattle grazing in the distance, dark shapes against the golden grass. It was beautiful in a stark, practical way, the kind of beauty that came from hard work and careful planning rather than any natural gift. "Welcome to the Xenith Ranch," Isaac said, and there was a note of pride in his voice that made Lily understand how much this place meant to him. They descended the ridge and rode into the yard, where chickens scattered, squawking their indignation at being disturbed. Isaac dismounted and then helped Lily down, his hands steady on her waist as she half slid, half fell into a standing position. Her legs nearly buckled, stiff from the long ride, but she managed to keep her feet through sheer determination. "Let me show you the house," Isaac said, leading the way to the cabin's front door. It was not locked. Out here, miles from the nearest neighbor, locks seemed almost pointless. Inside, the cabin was clean and spare, furnished with handmade furniture that was sturdy, if not elegant. A stone fireplace dominated one wall of the main room, with a cook stove set up in the corner near what was clearly meant to be the kitchen area. Two doors led off the main room, presumably to bedrooms, and a ladder against one wall suggested a loft space above. "This is yours," Isaac said, opening one of the doors to reveal a small bedroom with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a window that looked out toward the mountains. "I sleep in the other room, and the loft is for storage right now. You can arrange things however you like, add whatever you need. I will not come in here without permission, and you can bar the door from the inside if it makes you feel safer." Lily stepped into the room, her throat tight. It was small and plain, but it was clean and private, and it was hers. After 3 years of sleeping on a pallet in the kitchen of Margaret's boarding house, this felt like a palace. She ran her hand over the quilt that covered the bed, a simple pattern of blue and white, and had to blink back sudden tears. "Thank you," she managed. Isaac stood in the doorway, his hat in his hands, looking uncomfortable with her emotion. "I will leave you to settle in," he said. "There is water in the pitcher, and I will get your things from." "Oh." He stopped, a realization crossing his face. "You do not have things, do I?" "No," Lily said, her voice barely audible. "Everything I had was sold by Margaret to pay Thomas's debts, or so she claimed." Isaac's jaw tightened, a muscle jumping beneath his skin, and for a moment he looked angry enough to ride back to Bozeman and give Margaret Harper a piece of his mind. But he mastered himself and said, "Then we will get you what you need. Tomorrow I will take you back to town, to the general store. You can pick out some fabric for dresses, whatever else you require. Put it on my account." "I cannot let you do that," Lily protested. "You have already spent so much." "Consider it part of your wages," Isaac said firmly. "I am not a charity case, and neither are you. You will work, I will pay you, and part of that pay includes making sure you have what you need to do that work. Now, I need to see to the horse and check on the cattle before dark. The kitchen is stocked if you are hungry, and there is bread in the box near the stove. Make yourself at home, Miss Harper." He was gone before she could correct him, his boots thudding across the wooden floor, and then the door closing behind him with a solid thunk. Lily sank down on the edge of the bed, her legs giving out as the events of the day finally caught up with her. She looked down at the silver dollar still clutched in her hand, its surface warm from her body heat, and wondered what sort of man would spend $50 in gold to free a stranger, only to turn around and give her silver as a symbol of that freedom. Isaac Xenith was either a saint or a fool, and she was not entirely sure which possibility frightened her more. As the days turned into weeks, Lily began to understand that Isaac was neither saint nor fool, but simply a man trying to live by his principles in a world that made that difficult. He worked from dawn until well after dusk, riding out to check his cattle, mending fences, cutting hay, and performing the 1,000 other tasks that kept a ranch functioning. He spoke little, moved with quiet efficiency, and treated Lily with a careful, distant respect that she appreciated even as it puzzled her. She in turn threw herself into the work of managing the household. She cooked meals that were simple but hearty, cleaned the cabin until it gleamed, tended the garden that had been growing wild in Isaac's absence, and learned to care for the chickens that provided their eggs. It felt good to work for herself, or at least for someone who treated her like a person rather than a burden. Isaac never raised his voice, never criticized her efforts even when her first attempts at ranch cooking were less than successful, and always thanked her for her work at the end of each day. True to his word, he had taken her to the general store in Bozeman the day after her arrival. Lily had chosen her supplies carefully, mindful of the cost, even though Isaac had told her not to worry about it. She selected sturdy calico for 2 work dresses, muslin for undergarments, a good pair of boots to replace her worn-out shoes, and a few other necessities. The storekeeper had looked at her with curious eyes, no doubt wondering about her connection to Isaac Xenith, but Isaac had simply paid the bill without comment and escorted her back to the wagon without engaging in the town's gossip. They had seen Margaret Harper on that trip, standing outside the boarding house with her perpetual scowl firmly in place. Their eyes had met for just a moment, and Lily had felt a chill run down her spine at the hatred she saw there. But Isaac had been beside her, solid and protective without being overbearing, and Margaret had not approached. That was 3 weeks ago, and they had not returned to town since. Now, as September's cooler weather began to creep into the Montana valleys, Lily found herself settling into a rhythm that felt almost comfortable. She woke before dawn to start the cook stove and prepare breakfast while Isaac did the morning chores. They ate together in companionable silence, and then Isaac would ride out while Lily tackled the day's housework. He returned at midday for dinner, the main meal, and then went back out until supper time. Evenings they spent in the main room, Isaac mending tack or reading from the handful of books he owned, while Lily sewed or knitted by lamplight. It was during one of these quiet evenings that Isaac finally told her his story. They had been living under the same roof for nearly a month, and while they had grown comfortable with each other's presence, they had shared very little of their pasts. Lily knew Isaac was 26, had owned the ranch for 2 years, and preferred coffee strong enough to strip paint. Isaac knew Lily was 21, had been widowed 3 months before he met her, and could make biscuits that were just about the best thing he had ever tasted. Beyond those basic facts, they remained mysteries to each other. But that evening, with the first real cold of autumn rattling the windows and the fire burning bright against the darkness, Isaac set down the bridle he had been repairing and said, "I had a sister once. Her name was Eleanor." Lily looked up from the shirt she was mending, sensing that this was important. She waited, not pushing, letting Isaac find his words in his own time. "She was 2 years younger than me," he continued, staring into the flames. "Sweet as honey, smart as a whip, and stubborn as a mule when she got an idea in her head. Our parents died when I was 18 and she was 16. Influenza took them both within a week of each other. We had a small farm in Missouri. Not much, but it was ours. I tried to keep it going, tried to take care of Eleanor. But I was young and stupid and did not know half of what I needed to know." He paused, his hands clenching and unclenching on his knees. Lily set down her sewing, giving him her full attention. "A man came around one day, all smooth talk and fancy promises. Said he was a businessman from St. Louis, looking for girls to work in respectable establishments back east. Waitresses and shop girls and such. Good wages and safe conditions. Eleanor was 17 by then, restless and tired of farm life, and she wanted to go. I told her no, told her it sounded wrong, but she did not listen. She snuck out one night and left with him, left me a note saying she would be fine and not to worry." Lily's heart clenched, already guessing where this story was going. "I found out 6 months later what really happened to her," Isaac said, his voice going flat and hard. "She hadn't gone to work in any respectable shop. She had been sold to a brothel, kept there against her will, used up and thrown away when she got sick. By the time I found her, she was dying. Laudanum and disease and a broken spirit that I could not fix, no matter how hard I tried. She died in my arms in a charity hospital, and the last thing she said to me was that she was sorry for not listening." "Oh, Isaac," Lily breathed, tears stinging her eyes. "I sold the farm after that," he said. "Could not stand to be there without her, could not stand to look at the fields we had worked together. I drifted west, worked as a ranch hand and a drover, saved every penny I could. When I had enough, I bought this land, built this house, and swore that I would make something good out of what was left of my life. And then I heard about an auction in Bozeman, about a woman being sold like property, and I could not stop seeing Eleanor's face, could not stop thinking about how maybe if someone had helped her, had given her a real choice instead of letting her get swallowed up by evil men with evil plans, she might still be alive." He finally turned to look at Lily, his gray eyes reflecting the firelight. "So that is why I bought you free. Not because I am a saint or because I was looking for some kind of redemption. I did it because I could not save Eleanor. But maybe I could save you. Maybe I could give you the choice she never got to make." Lily felt tears streaming down her face, overwhelmed by the weight of his pain and the gift he had given her without asking for anything in return. She crossed the room without thinking, knelt beside his chair and took his hands in hers. "You did save me," she said fiercely. "You gave me more than a choice. You gave me back my life, my dignity, my future. What happened to Eleanor was not your fault, and you honor her memory every day by being the man you are. She would be proud of you, Isaac. I am sure of it. Isaac looked down at their joined hands, his throat working as he swallowed hard. I think about her every day, he admitted. Wonder what she would have become if she had lived. Wonder if she would have liked this place, this life. I think she would have loved it, Lily said softly. And I think she would have been grateful that her brother turned his grief into something good instead of letting it destroy him. They stayed like that for a long moment, connected by shared pain and the beginning of something that was more than gratitude, more than simple companionship. Then Isaac gently squeezed her hands and released them, standing up and putting a careful distance between them once more. It is late, he said. We should get some rest. Morning comes early. Lily nodded and returned to her room, but sleep was long in coming. She lay in the darkness, thinking about Eleanor Xenith and Margaret Harper, about choices and chances, and the strange paths that life took. She thought about Isaac, with his quiet strength and hidden wounds, and wondered when exactly she had stopped seeing him as just her employer and started seeing him as something more. The realization should have frightened her. She had been married before, after all, and while Thomas had been kind enough, there had been no great passion in their union. It had been a practical arrangement, a young woman with no family and a young man with a domineering mother who needed someone to do the housework. She had cared for Thomas in her way, had mourned his death sincerely, but she had never felt her heart race at his smile or her pulse quicken at his touch. With Isaac, everything was different. The way he moved, all controlled grace and economical motion, made her breath catch. The rare times he smiled, usually at something small like a particularly good batch of biscuits or a calf born healthy, made warmth bloom in her chest. His hands, calloused and strong from years of hard work, fascinated her in ways she did not entirely understand. And his kindness, that fundamental decency that had driven him to spend $50 in gold to free a stranger, made her want to know everything about him, to peel back his layers and discover all the pieces that made him who he was. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure, this growing feeling that she could not quite name but recognized as dangerous. Isaac Xenith had given her freedom, had made it clear that she could leave any time she chose. Developing feelings for him, letting herself hope for something more than an employer and employee relationship, felt like a betrayal of that gift. It felt like she would be taking advantage of his kindness, imposing feelings on him that he might not share and did not deserve to have forced upon him. So Lily kept her growing emotions locked away, hidden behind a professional demeanor and careful distance. She cooked and cleaned and tended the garden, and when Isaac came in from the range with dirt on his face and exhaustion in his eyes, she did not reach out to smooth his hair or ask if he needed anything beyond the meal she had already prepared. She was grateful for his rescue, appreciative of his employment, and absolutely terrified of the way her heart insisted on beating faster every time he walked into a room. October arrived with the first hard frost, and with it came the need to prepare for winter in earnest. Isaac worked long days cutting and stacking firewood, while Lily preserved everything the garden yielded, filling the root cellar with potatoes and carrots and turnips, making jams and pickles from the last of the fruits and vegetables. They worked separately but in tandem, each focused on their own tasks, but united in the common goal of ensuring their survival through the harsh Montana winter that was rapidly approaching. One evening, as Lily was standing on a stool, trying to reach a high shelf in the pantry where she wanted to store some preserves, her foot slipped, and she would have fallen if Isaac had not suddenly been there, catching her around the waist and steadying her against him. For a moment they stood frozen, her back pressed against his chest, his arms wrapped protectively around her middle, both of them breathing hard from the sudden adrenaline of the near accident. "Careful," Isaac said, his voice rough and close to her ear. "That would have been a nasty fall." "I am sorry," Lily managed, intensely aware of every point where their bodies touched. "I did not hear you come in." I should have announced myself, Isaac said, but he did not immediately let go. His hands remained on her waist, warm through the fabric of her dress, and she could feel the solid strength of him supporting her. You could have been hurt. But I was not, Lily said, daring to turn her head slightly so she could see his face. You caught me. Their eyes met, and something electric passed between them, a current of possibility that made Lily's breath catch in her throat. Isaac's gaze dropped to her lips for just a moment, so briefly she might have imagined it, and his arms tightened fractionally around her. She thought he might kiss her, hoped he might kiss her, and her heart hammered so hard she was sure he must be able to feel it. But then Isaac released her, stepping back carefully and making sure she was steady on the ground before putting more distance between them. You should use the ladder for high shelves, he said, his voice studiedly neutral. It is safer. Yes, Lily agreed, disappointment and relief warring in her chest. I will do that. Isaac left the kitchen without another word, and Lily braced her hands on the counter, trying to calm her racing pulse. That had been something, she was sure of it. Not just her imagination or wishful thinking, but a genuine moment of connection, of mutual attraction. Isaac had wanted to kiss her, had almost kissed her, and only his iron control had prevented it. The question was whether that control came from lack of interest or from an excess of honor. Isaac had made it clear from the beginning that she was free to leave, that she was not beholden to him despite the money he had spent. Would he see any romantic overture as taking advantage of her vulnerable position? Would he believe that she could not freely consent to anything more than an employer-employee relationship as long as she depended on him for food and shelter? The thought was frustrating because Lily knew her own mind and heart. She was not some frightened girl who would accept advances out of fear or obligation. She was a grown woman who had been married before, who understood the difference between duty and desire, and who was rapidly falling in love with the complicated, honorable man who had bought her freedom and asked for nothing in return. But how could she make Isaac understand that without seeming to throw herself at him? How could she signal her interest without making him uncomfortable or putting their working relationship at risk? Lily had no answers, only the growing certainty that something had to change or she would go mad from the tension of living under the same roof with a man she desperately wanted but could not figure out how to reach. The weather turned colder as October advanced, and the work around the ranch shifted to reflect the changing season. Isaac began gathering his cattle from the far pastures, bringing them closer to the barn where he could keep an eye on them through the winter. Lily helped where she could, learning to handle the horses despite her initial nervousness and gradually becoming more comfortable with the rhythms of ranch life. They fell into a new pattern during those long autumn days, working side by side more often as the outdoor tasks required extra hands. Isaac taught her to milk the cow he had purchased from a neighbor, showed her how to properly feed the horses and muck out their stalls, and patiently explained the basics of cattle behavior so she could help move small groups when needed. Lily proved to be a quick learner, and Isaac never made her feel stupid for her initial ignorance or mistakes. In turn, Lily made sure Isaac ate proper meals instead of the hasty, poorly balanced food he had subsisted on before her arrival. She mended his clothes, which had been nearly worn to rags, and knitted him a new scarf and gloves for the coming winter. Small acts of care that she told herself were just part of her job, but which felt increasingly personal with each passing day. One particularly cold morning in late October, Lily woke to find the world transformed by the first real snowfall of the season. Several inches of white covered everything, muffling sounds and turning the ranch into something from a fairy tale. She dressed quickly in the pre-dawn darkness and hurried to the kitchen to start breakfast, knowing Isaac would need a hot meal before heading out into the cold. But when she entered the main room, she found Isaac already awake, standing at the window and looking out at the snow with an expression she could not quite read. He had not lit the stove yet, and his breath formed small clouds in the chilly air. It came early this year, he said, without turning around. Another few weeks, and I would have had all the preparations finished. What still needs to be done? Lily asked, moving to light the stove. Reinforcing the barn roof, fixing that section of fence on the north pasture, getting the last of the hay stacked. Isaac listed. All things that will be harder now with snow on the ground, but not impossible. Just means longer days and colder work. Then we had better make sure you have a good breakfast, Lily said firmly. You cannot work hard on an empty stomach. Isaac finally turned from the window, and in the growing light, she could see the worry lines around his eyes. This ranch means everything to me, he said quietly. If I lose stock to the winter, if something goes wrong that I did not prepare for, I might not recover financially. I have put everything I have into this place. You will not lose it, Lily said with more confidence than she felt. You are a good rancher, Isaac. You work harder than any 3 men I have ever seen. The ranch will survive, and so will we. Something in Isaac's expression softened at her words, particularly at her use of we instead of you. I am glad you are here, he said, the admission seeming to cost him something. I do not know if I have said that before, but it is true. This place feels more like a home with you in it, and not just because the cooking has improved. Lily felt heat rise to her cheeks that had nothing to do with the stove she was lighting. I am glad I am here too, she said, meeting his eyes. More glad than I can properly express. You gave me a life when I thought mine was over, Isaac. I will never be able to repay that. You do not owe me anything, Isaac said, moving closer but still maintaining that careful distance he always kept. You have earned your keep 10 times over. If anything, I owe you for making this place feel less lonely. They stood looking at each other across the kitchen, and Lily thought again that he might close the distance, might finally acknowledge the tension that hummed between them like a living thing. But then a loud thump from outside broke the moment, probably snow sliding off the barn roof, and Isaac stepped back, clearing his throat. I should get started on chores, he said. The animals will not feed themselves, snow or no snow. Breakfast will be ready in 30 minutes, Lily told him, and he nodded before heading out into the cold. Lily watched through the window as he crossed the yard, his shoulders hunched against the wind, and made a decision. This careful dance they were doing could not continue indefinitely. One of them had to be brave enough to speak honestly about what was happening between them, to risk rejection or awkwardness for the chance at something real. And if Isaac's honor or concern for her position prevented him from making the first move, then it would have to be Lily who took that chance. The question was how and when, not if. She needed to find the right moment, the right words, to tell Isaac Xenith that she did not just work for him, did not just respect or appreciate him. She needed to tell him that she had fallen in love with him, completely and irrevocably, and that if he felt even a fraction of the same, she wanted the chance to explore what that might mean for both of them. The opportunity came sooner than she expected, arriving on a bitter November afternoon when a blizzard blew in without warning, trapping them both inside the cabin for 2 days straight. Isaac had been working on the barn when the first flakes began to fall, and he barely made it back to the house before the full fury of the storm hit. They secured the animals as best they could and then barricaded themselves inside, while the wind howled like a living thing and snow piled in drifts against the walls. The first day was not so bad. They had plenty of firewood stacked inside, enough food to last weeks, and the cabin was well built enough to keep out most of the cold. They played cards, read aloud from Isaac's small library, and simply enjoyed having a forced break from the constant labor that usually filled their days. But by the second day, the enforced closeness was wearing on both of them, the tension that usually existed in the background becoming impossible to ignore when trapped in close quarters with nowhere to retreat. Lily was trying to knead bread dough, pounding her frustration into the resilient mass, when Isaac came up behind her and gently took her hands, stilling their frantic motion. You are going to tear that dough apart, he said quietly. What is wrong? Nothing, Lily said automatically, then stopped herself. This was the moment she realized. This was when she needed to be brave, needed to speak the truth, even if it meant risking everything. No, that is not true. Everything is wrong, or maybe everything is right, and I am just too afraid to say so. Isaac's hands remained on hers. warm and steady. "Tell me," he said. Lily took a deep breath and turned to face him, forcing herself to meet his eyes, even though her heart was trying to beat its way out of her chest. "I have feelings for you," she said, the words tumbling out in a rush. "More than gratitude, more than friendship. I think I have been falling in love with you since the day you bought me free and gave me silver instead of chains, and I know this is probably not what you want to hear, that you probably see me as just your employee, or maybe as some kind of responsibility, but I cannot keep pretending that I do not feel what I feel. So there it is. I love you, Isaac Xenith, and I needed you to know, even if you do not feel the same way." The silence that followed her declaration seemed to stretch for eternity. Isaac stood frozen, his hands still on hers, his expression unreadable. Lily felt panic beginning to rise, felt the certainty that she had just made a terrible mistake, that she had ruined the one good thing in her life by being unable to keep her feelings to herself. But then Isaac moved, one hand coming up to cup her face with a gentleness that made her breath catch. "You think I do not feel the same?" he asked, his voice rough with emotion. "Lily, I have been in love with you since the second week you were here, when you burned the biscuits so badly we had to throw them to the chickens, and you laughed instead of crying. I have spent every day since then trying to keep my distance, trying not to take advantage of your situation or make you feel obligated to return feelings you might not have. I never imagined that you might actually want me too." "Of course I want you," Lily said, tears starting to stream down her face. "How could I not? You are the best man I have ever known, Isaac. The only man who ever treated me like I mattered, like I was more than just a burden or a pair of hands to do work. You saved me in every way a person can be saved." "And you saved me right back," Isaac said, his thumb brushing away her tears. "This ranch was just a place before you came. You turned it into a home. You made me remember that life could be about more than just surviving, that maybe I deserve something good after all the bad." "Then why did we waste so much time?" Lily asked, laughing through her tears. "Why did we spend months dancing around this instead of just being honest?" "Because I am a fool," Isaac said. And then finally, he closed the last few inches between them and kissed her. It was nothing like kissing Thomas had been, nothing like the few awkward pecks her late husband had bestowed on her before or during their marriage. This was fire and need and perfect rightness, like coming home after a long journey. Isaac's arms came around her, pulling her close, and Lily melted into him, her hands fisting in his shirt as she kissed him back with all the pent-up longing of the past months. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Isaac rested his forehead against hers and smiled, a real smile that transformed his usually serious face into something beautiful. "I love you," he said, clear and certain. "I love you, and I want you to stay forever if you will have me." "Yes," Lily breathed. "Yes to all of it, to forever, to everything." They spent the rest of the day wrapped in each other's arms, talking and kissing and making plans for a future that suddenly seemed bright with possibility. The storm raged outside, but inside the cabin they were warm and safe and happier than either had been in years. When the blizzard finally blew itself out the next morning, it left a world scrubbed clean and sparkling under brilliant blue skies, and Lily took it as a sign that they were being given a fresh start, a chance to build something new from the ashes of their separate pains. Isaac rode into Bozeman the following week and returned with the circuit preacher, a jovial man named Reverend Matthews, who married them in the cabin's main room with only the preacher's wife as witness. Lily wore her best dress, the deep blue calico she had made from fabric Isaac had bought her, and Isaac wore his Sunday clothes that had been carefully cleaned and pressed for the occasion. It was a simple ceremony, with no fancy decorations or elaborate vows, but when Isaac slipped a thin gold band on her finger and kissed her as his wife, Lily felt like the richest woman in the world. Their wedding night was tender and sweet, Isaac treating her with a care and passion that made her understand the difference between obligation and desire. between going through the motions and truly making love. He made her feel cherished and wanted and beautiful in ways she had never experienced before. And when she fell asleep in his arms, she did so with the knowledge that she was exactly where she was meant to be. The winter that followed was hard in the way that all Montana winters were hard, with bitter cold and deep snow, and days when it seemed the sun barely rose before setting again. But Isaac and Lily faced it together, working side by side to keep the ranch running and the animals alive. They learned each other's rhythms and habits, figured out how to disagree without fighting, and discovered that they made a better team than either had imagined possible. Isaac taught Lily everything he knew about ranching, and she proved to have a natural feel for the work once she got over her initial nervousness around the animals. Lily helped Isaac see that accepting help was not weakness, and that he did not have to carry every burden alone. They grew together in ways both large and small, building a partnership based on mutual respect and deep love. Spring came eventually, as it always did, melting the snow and bringing the world back to life. Isaac's cattle had survived the winter in good shape, and he was able to sell off some steers at a profit that let him expand the herd as he had hoped. The ranch prospered, and with it came a sense of security that neither Isaac nor Lily had ever really felt before. One evening in late May, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of gold and purple, Lily took Isaac's hand and placed it on her belly, which had just begun to show the first small curve of pregnancy. "We are going to have a baby," she said softly. "Sometime in early December, the way I figure it." Isaac's face went through several emotions in rapid succession: shock, joy, fear, and then settling into a kind of awed wonder. "A baby," he repeated. "We are going to be parents." "Are you happy?" Lily asked, suddenly nervous. They had not discussed children yet, had been too caught up in simply being married and running the ranch to think about expanding their family so soon. "Happy does not even begin to cover it," Isaac said, pulling her close and kissing her with a fierce tenderness. Terrified too, if I am being honest, but mostly just incredibly happy. "We are going to have a baby, Lily. A whole new person who is part you and part me." "I hope he has your eyes," Lily said dreamily. "Those beautiful gray eyes that I fell in love with." "And I hope she has your smile," Isaac countered. "That smile that makes everything seem possible." They sat together as the light faded, making plans and dreaming dreams, talking about names and nurseries and all the things new parents discussed since time began. The future stretched out before them, uncertain in its specifics, but bright with promise, and Lily sent up a silent prayer of thanks to whatever forces had brought her to that auction platform in Bozeman, because without that dark day, she would never have known this perfect light. The summer passed in a blur of work and preparation. Isaac added a third bedroom to the cabin, working late into the evenings to get it finished before the baby came. Lily sewed tiny clothes and knitted impossibly small booties, her hands working while her mind wandered over all the changes about to come. They made one trip to Bozeman in August, to stock up on supplies and to visit the doctor who confirmed that both Lily and the baby seemed healthy and strong. They saw Margaret Harper on that trip, though the encounter was brief and unpleasant. She was coming out of the saloon, looking older and meaner than Lily remembered, and when she saw Lily obviously pregnant and holding Isaac's hand, something ugly twisted her face. "Looks like you landed on your feet," Margaret said, her voice slurred with drink. "Should have known you would find some fool to take you in." Isaac stepped forward, his body shifting to put himself between Margaret and Lily. "You sold her like an animal," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "You took money for another human being's freedom and dignity. If I never see you again in this life, it will be too soon." Margaret spat in the dirt at their feet, but there was something defeated in her posture, something that spoke of a life gone wrong and no way to fix it. "She was never good enough for my Thomas," she said, but the venom had gone out of her words. "Neither was I, probably. Nobody was ever good enough." She shambled away before either Isaac or Lily could respond, disappearing into the afternoon crowds. Lily felt pity more than anger, seeing the broken woman Margaret had become. Bitterness and hate had eaten her alive from the inside, leaving behind only a hollow shell. Mo, she cannot hurt you anymore, Isaac said gently. You are free of her, free of all of it. I know, Lily said, and meant it. Whatever power Margaret had once held over her life was gone now, dissolved in the face of the love and security Isaac provided. Let us go home. They drove back to the ranch in comfortable silence, and Lily reflected on how much her life had changed in less than a year. This time last year, she had been trapped in a miserable marriage, subject to her mother-in-law's constant cruelty, with no hope of escape and no future to look forward to. Now she was pregnant and happily married to a man who loved her, living on a beautiful ranch that was beginning to feel like it had always been hers. The transformation was so complete it sometimes felt like a dream, like she might wake up any moment and find herself back in Margaret's boarding house, scrubbing floors and choking on despair. But it was not a dream. It was real, solid, and true, built on the foundation of Isaac's basic decency and her own determination to make something good from the ashes of what had been. And as the ranch came into view, nestled in its valley with the mountains standing guard in the distance, Lily felt a rush of love so strong it brought tears to her eyes. I am so grateful, she said suddenly, for all of it, even the bad parts that led me here, because without them I would never have found you. Isaac reached over and squeezed her hand, understanding without needing more words. They had both walked through fire to get to this place, had both endured losses and hardships that might have broken lesser people. But they had survived, and more than that, they had found each other. That was worth any price either of them had paid along the way. The baby came on a frigid December night during a snowstorm that was not quite as fierce as the blizzard that had trapped them together the previous winter, but was impressive nonetheless. Isaac had ridden to fetch the midwife that afternoon when Lily's pain started, and the woman had arrived just as full dark fell, her horse struggling through the drifts. Mrs. Patterson was a sturdy woman in her 50s who had delivered more babies than she could count, and her calm competence helped ease some of Isaac's obvious terror. He paced in the main room while Mrs. Patterson and Lily worked in the bedroom, his face pale and his hands clenched into fists every time Lily cried out. But when the baby finally arrived in the small hours of the morning, when Mrs. Patterson called Isaac in to meet his child, all the fear fell away from his face, replaced by pure wonder. Lily lay exhausted but radiant against the pillows, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in soft blankets. And when Isaac approached, she pulled back the fabric to reveal their son. He was perfect, all pink skin and downy dark hair, with eyes that would probably turn gray like his father's in time. His tiny fists waved in the air, and when Isaac carefully reached out one finger, the baby grasped it with surprising strength. He is beautiful, Isaac breathed. Perfect. What should we call him? They had discussed names throughout the pregnancy, but had never quite settled on one. Now, looking at her son's face, Lily knew exactly what he should be called. Elijah, she said. After your sister Eleanor, so part of her lives on in him. Isaac's eyes filled with tears, and he bent to kiss Lily's forehead and then the baby's. Elijah Isaac Xenith, he said. Welcome to the world, son. Your mother and I have been waiting for you. Mrs. Patterson stayed for 3 days, making sure both Lily and the baby were doing well before she would consent to leave. Isaac paid her generously and made sure she had an escort back to town through the snow. Then they were alone, just the three of them, learning how to be a family. The first months were exhausting in ways neither Isaac nor Lily had anticipated. Elijah was a good baby as babies went, but he still needed to eat every few hours around the clock, and keeping up with the ranch work while caring for an infant proved challenging. But they managed, taking turns with the night feedings when Elijah took a bottle of cow's milk mixed just right, supporting each other through the moments of doubt and exhaustion. And there were moments of perfect joy too, like when Elijah smiled for the first time at 6 weeks old, or when he laughed at 3 months, a gurgling chuckle that made both parents stop whatever they were doing just to hear it again. Isaac proved to be a devoted father, spending every spare moment with his son, talking to him and singing to him and carrying him around the ranch to show him his future inheritance. He is too young to understand anything you are telling him, Lily would tease, watching Isaac explain cattle breeding techniques to a baby who could barely hold up his own head. He understands more than you think, Isaac would respond seriously. And even if he does not now, he will remember my voice. He will know his father was here, was present, was interested in his life. Lily would just smile and let Isaac continue his one-sided conversations, understanding that this was important to him, that he was determined to be the kind of father who was involved and caring, and nothing like the absent parents whose early deaths had shaped so much of his life. The years rolled on, bringing changes and challenges and countless small joys. Elijah grew into a sturdy toddler with his father's gray eyes and his mother's bright smile. The ranch prospered, growing from 50 head of cattle to over 200, and Isaac hired 2 ranch hands to help with the work. Lily proved to have a gift for the business side of ranching, keeping careful records and managing accounts with a precision that freed Isaac to focus on the practical work he loved. When Elijah was 3, a baby sister joined the family, a tiny girl they named Isabel Margaret Xenith. The middle name was Isaac's idea, a way to honor what Margaret Harper might have been if bitterness had not consumed her, and a reminder to themselves never to let hate poison what they had built. Isabel was calmer than her brother had been, content to watch the world with wide blue eyes and offer gummy smiles to anyone who paid her attention. 2 years after Isabel came another son, Samuel Joseph Xenith, who had his mother's dark hair and his father's serious disposition. The cabin had to be expanded again to accommodate the growing family, and what had once been a simple 4-room log house slowly transformed into a sprawling ranch house with multiple bedrooms, a proper dining room, and even a small parlor for entertaining the neighbors who had gradually materialized as more people settled in the valley. Through it all, Isaac and Lily's love remained the foundation on which everything else was built. They had their disagreements, of course, their moments of frustration or misunderstanding, but they had learned early how to talk through problems rather than letting them fester. And beneath any temporary conflict lay the bedrock certainty that they belonged together, that they were partners in every sense of the word, that neither could imagine life without the other. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Isaac surprised Lily with a gift that made her cry. It was a silver locket on a delicate chain, and when she opened it, she found 2 tiny photographs inside. One was of Isaac, looking young and almost shy, taken by a traveling photographer who had passed through the previous summer. The other was of the silver dollar he had given her that first day, the one she still kept in a special box on her dresser. "So you never forget," Isaac said softly, fastening the locket around her neck. "Never forget that you are free, that you are loved, and that you can choose your own path, even if that path is staying right here with me." "I will always choose you," Lily said, kissing him with all the passion of that first kiss during the blizzard and all the deep affection of a decade spent building a life together. "Every day, in every way, I will always choose you." That night, after the children were asleep and the house was quiet, they sat together on the porch as they had done so many times before, watching the stars wheel overhead and listening to the peaceful sounds of their ranch settling down for the night. The cattle lowed softly in the distance, and somewhere an owl hooted, hunting in the darkness. "Do you ever think about that day?" Lily asked. "The day you bought me at the auction?" "All the time," Isaac admitted. "I think about how close I came to not going to town at all that day, how if I had decided to put off the supply run by even one day, I would have missed you entirely. Someone else would have bought you, and you would be living a completely different life." "I do not want to imagine that," Lily said with a shudder. "I do not want to think about what my life might have been without you." "You would have survived," Isaac said with certainty. "You are stronger than you give yourself credit for, Lily. You would have found a way to make a life, to be happy. But I am selfish enough to be grateful that it is my life you are sharing, that it is me you wake up beside every morning." "Not selfish," Lily corrected. Lucky. We are both so incredibly lucky. They sat in comfortable silence for a while longer, and then Isaac said, I got a letter from the land office last week. They are finally surveying the territories to the north, opening up new land for homesteading. I was thinking maybe in a few years, when the kids are older, we could expand, buy up some of that land while it is still cheap, really grow this operation into something that will provide for all of them and their children too. More land means more work, Lily pointed out, but she was smiling. She loved that Isaac was always thinking ahead, always planning for their future. More land also means more opportunity, Isaac said. And we have good help now. We could handle it, I think. Build something really lasting, something that will be here long after we are gone. I love that you think that way, Lily said, leaning her head on his shoulder. Always building, always looking forward. It makes me feel secure, knowing you are thinking about the future. I have a lot to protect now, Isaac said simply. You, the children, this ranch. I want to make sure you are all taken care of, no matter what happens. Nothing is going to happen, Lily said firmly. We are going to grow old together, you and I. We are going to watch our children grow up and have children of their own. We are going to sit on this porch when we are 80 years old and gray-haired and still holding hands, still choosing each other every single day. Promise? Isaac asked, and there was something vulnerable in his voice. Some echo of the young man who had lost his sister and his parents and had sworn never to lose anyone else. Promise, Lily said. I am not going anywhere, Isaac Xenith. You are stuck with me for life. Best thing that ever happened to me, Isaac said and kissed the top of her head. The years continued to pass, bringing both joys and sorrows as all lives must. Isaac's prediction about northern expansion proved correct, and they were able to acquire another 300 acres of prime grazing land at advantageous prices. The Xenith Ranch became one of the largest and most successful operations in the territory, known for quality cattle and fair dealing. Elijah grew into a fine young man who loved the ranch as much as his father did, and who showed every sign of being ready to take over when the time came. Isabel proved to have her mother's head for business, and she handled the ranch accounts and correspondence with a skill that rivaled Lily's own. Samuel was the quieter of the three, more interested in books and learning than in cattle or ledgers, and Isaac and Lily supported his desire to attend university back east, proud that their son would be the first in either of their families to receive advanced education. Montana gained statehood in 1889, and Bozeman continued to grow from a rough frontier town into a proper city with schools and churches and all the trappings of civilization. Isaac served on the town council for a term, though he found politics frustrating, and was relieved when his service was complete. Lily became involved in various charitable organizations, using her experience to help other women who found themselves in difficult situations, though nothing quite as dire as being sold at auction. They heard, through the gossip that reached even their isolated ranch, that Margaret Harper had died in the winter of 1891, alone and unmourned, her boarding house sold for debts, and her name quickly forgotten. Lily felt sadness, but also a sense of closure, knowing that the woman who had tried to destroy her life had instead inadvertently given her the greatest gift imaginable by putting her in Isaac's path. On their 20th anniversary, the whole family gathered for a celebration that lasted 2 days. Elijah, now 22 and courting a sweet girl from a neighboring ranch, gave a toast to his parents that had everyone teary-eyed. Isabel, 17 and fiercely independent, presented them with a beautiful quilt she had made herself, every stitch a labor of love. And Samuel, home from university for the summer at 15, read them a poem he had written about love and commitment and choosing each other every day. When the festivities were over and the house was quiet again, Isaac and Lily found themselves back on the porch, in the same spot where they had spent countless evenings over the years. They were older now, with silver threading through their hair and lines on their faces that spoke of years lived fully, but the love between them burned as bright as ever. 20 years, Lily marveled. Sometimes it feels like yesterday that you bought me free and sometimes it feels like we have been together forever. Both are true, Isaac said philosophically. Time is strange that way, but I would not change a single moment of it, even the hard parts. Everything we went through made us who we are. Do you ever regret it? Lily asked. Spending that $50 gold on a desperate stranger? Think of all the things you could have bought with that money instead. Isaac turned to look at her, his gray eyes still as piercing as they had been that first day, and smiled. I bought you, he said simply. And in doing so, I bought myself a life worth living. I bought love and family and a reason to get up every morning. I bought a partner who makes me better than I ever could have been alone. If that is not the best investment a man can make, then I do not know what is. Lily felt tears prick her eyes, even after all these years, still moved by Isaac's declarations. You gave me silver, she said, touching the locket she still wore every day. You gave me freedom and choice and a future I never dreamed was possible. You gave me everything, Isaac. We gave each other everything, Isaac corrected. That is what love is, Lily. It is not one person saving another. It is two people choosing to save each other. Every single day. They kissed as the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, and Lily thought about that terrified young woman standing on an auction platform, certain her life was over. She wished she could go back and tell that woman not to despair, that the tall cowboy with storm cloud eyes was about to change everything, that the worst day of her life was actually the beginning of the best days. But then again, maybe that woman did not need to be told. Maybe she had seen something in Isaac's face that day, some glimmer of hope or promise that had made her choose to trust him. Maybe on some deep level she had known that the man who bought her with gold and gave her silver was offering something more precious than either, a chance at real freedom, real love, real life. The children grew and eventually left home to build lives of their own. Elijah married his sweetheart and took over the day-to-day running of the ranch, building his own house on the north section of the property and filling it with children who called Isaac and Lily Grandpa and Grandma with cheerful enthusiasm. Isabel shocked everyone by becoming a lawyer, one of the first women to practice in Montana, and she used her skills to help women and families in need, carrying on her mother's legacy of lifting others up. Samuel became a teacher, then a professor, writing books about Western history that earned him recognition and respect throughout the academic world. Through it all, Isaac and Lily remained the center around which their family orbited. They were the fixed point, the stable foundation, the example of what love could be when two people committed fully to each other and to building something lasting. They watched their grandchildren grow with the same wonder and joy they had felt watching their own children, and they faced the inevitable losses and challenges of aging with grace and mutual support. On a warm June evening in 1908, 30 years after that fateful day in Bozeman, Isaac and Lily sat together on their porch for what would be one of the last times. Isaac had been ill that winter, his heart weakening, and though he had rallied in the spring, Lily could see the toll it had taken on him. He moved more slowly now, tired more easily, but his mind was sharp and his love for her unwavering. I have been thinking, Isaac said, his hand clasped firmly in Lily's, about the day we met, about how I almost did not go to town, how I almost turned away from the auction. So many small choices that could have gone differently. But they did not, Lily said gently, knowing where his mind was going. They went exactly as they were meant to, and we found each other. I want you to know, Isaac continued, his voice serious, that every day with you has been a gift. Every morning I woke up beside you. Every meal we shared, every conversation, every laugh, every tear, all of it was precious beyond measure. You made my life mean something, Lily. You and the children, and this life we built together gave me purpose and joy I never imagined possible. Isaac, Lily began, her throat tight with emotion, but he shook his head. Let me finish, he said. I do not know how much time I have left, but however much it is, I want to spend it just like this, holding your hand, watching the mountains, being grateful for every second we have had together. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Lily Harper Xenith, the very best thing. And you are mine, Lily said, tears streaming down her face. My savior, my partner, my great love. I would not trade our life together for anything in this world or the next. They sat together as the sun set and the stars came out, neither wanting to move, neither willing to let go. And though Isaac's time on earth was growing short, though the next winter would take him from her as gently as such things could happen, in that moment they were exactly where they had always been, together in love and grateful for the strange and beautiful path that had brought them from an auction platform to this porch, from captivity to freedom, from loneliness to belonging. Lily would live another 12 years after Isaac passed, long enough to see the birth of great-grandchildren and to witness her children thriving in the lives they had chosen. She never remarried, never even considered it, because how could anyone else compare to the man who had bought her freedom with gold and given her silver as a promise that she was worth more than any price? She kept the silver dollar and the locket until her own death at 83. And when she was buried beside Isaac in the small cemetery outside Bozeman, her granddaughter placed both items in her hands, symbols of a love that had transcended the worst that life could offer and had created something beautiful in its place. The ranch continued under Elijah's management and eventually his sons, remaining in the Xenith family for generations. And though times changed and the world moved on, the story of Isaac and Lily was passed down through the family like a treasured heirloom. The cowboy who bought a woman's freedom at auction and gave her silver to prove she was not owned, and the woman who took that gift and gave him back his heart, his purpose, and a love that lasted until death and beyond. It was a story of choosing each other in the darkest moments, of finding light in unexpected places, and of building a life worth living from the broken pieces of the past. It was a story of the Wild West at its worst and at its best, of injustice redeemed by love, and of two people who proved that sometimes the most valuable thing you can give another person is not gold or silver, but the freedom to choose their own path and the hope that they might choose to walk it beside you. Years later, when Elijah's great-great-granddaughter found the silver dollar tucked away in an old box in the ranch house attic, she asked her grandmother what it meant. The old woman, herself a keeper of family stories, sat the young girl down and told her about Lily and Isaac, about auction platforms and silver gifts and love that conquered all obstacles. "Never forget," the grandmother said, pressing the worn silver coin into the girl's palm, "that you come from a woman who was strong enough to survive being sold as property, and from a man who was brave enough to set her free. Their blood runs in your veins, their courage lives in your heart, and their love reminds us that sometimes the darkest moments can lead to the brightest futures. Hold on to this, remember their story, and know that you are descended from people who chose love over hate, hope over despair, and freedom over chains. That is your inheritance, more valuable than any amount of gold or silver could ever be." The girl closed her hand around the coin, feeling its weight and its history, and understood that she held more than just a piece of metal. She held a promise, a legacy, and a reminder that love, real love, was always worth fighting for, worth choosing, worth holding on to with everything you had. It was the lesson Isaac and Lily had learned on that dusty day in Bozeman so many years ago, and it remained true for all the generations that came after, that freedom and love were two sides of the same coin, and that together they could overcome anything the world threw against them.